What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we are going to be doing the stock report for week number 11. If you are new, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, join the community because I make content like this and mock drafts every single week, and we pretty much post almost every single day. Fun fact, I actually feel kind of bad when I don't post for one day out of the week. A little bit insane, but I'm fine being insane. Let's jump into this. Let's have some fun. Starting out with our stock up stars of the week. We are going to be starting out with Jaden Daniels. This guy has been on a tear this year. Obviously, he did phenomenally. He did something like 370 yards, 4 big-time throws, 0 turnover worthy plays, and then he also had over 200 on the ground, 5 total touchdowns. Like, that is ridiculous. So 372, 237 on the ground, too. Just ridiculous. Very, very well done. He actually started looking a little bit like Lamar Jackson back there, and his escape ability is incredible. You look at his frame, 6'4", 210 is not even that bad. I thought he was sub 200, so great overall. He is still on the thinner side of things. He's still, hell, ASU, the way he left ASU was pretty atrocious. They were over by his locker saying how ass he was. It's a unique situation that probably we need to dig a little bit more into to see the character of Jaden, but I haven't seen an issue at all with him so far at LSU in terms of the leadership. He's done a phenomenal job. Got to give a shout out to Brian Thomas. He's not on this either, but he had a very good day, 152 touchdowns. Like, just overall, really great player. My dream fit for him would be Seattle. I think that pretty much him being an upgraded Geno Smith, you have all the weapons at your disposal. You have an upgraded offensive line, even if, to be fair, I'm a fan of Alusagun, Oluwatimi, as well as Anthony Bradford. But, you guys have a great future there. It's overall going to be a great team. So, this is a great spot for this guy to just drop in. He already has his Malik Neighbors, essentially. He already has a Brian Thomas on that squad. So, overall, I think that'd be an excellent fit. He's ascended so quickly, so rapidly, and now he's pretty much almost a lock in the top 32. Especially with a lot of quarterbacks starting to lean towards returning, it's going to push up his value quite a bit. Now, could he end up going in the first 2 rounds? Sure, right? He hasn't had the perfect past, but, right now it's leaning towards him being top 32 for that 5th-year contract as well. Next, we got Cody Schrader. This dude was an absolute monster, 210 yards on the ground, and then over 100 yards pass catching. It's 116. So, over 300-yard day. That is ridiculous. Even versus Georgia, this guy had over 5 yards per carry. Like, just one of the more underrated backs in college right now. No one's really talking about him. I wanted to double check because I was like, man, no one's talking about this guy. He's probably going to be a 2025 prospect. No, he's eligible for this year, and he's probably going to come out this year. He's done a great job. I don't really exactly see him translating to the NFL in the way that maybe his numbers suggest he should. Like, he has, again, some really good tape. He does pop off. But in terms of being an every down starter, I highly doubt it. Would be very happy to be proven wrong. But, just he doesn't pass the eye test in terms of being an every down starter. He is probably a really good change of pace guy. I love the fact he's balanced in terms of being a good receiver as well as just a good guy on the ground. But, for me, I'd want him to be a complement back in an RBBC. That to me deserves probably a top 100 selection, but I don't really think that with the amount of running backs in his class, he'll get the respect of being a top 100 player. So I project him top 200. The New York Giants, there's a lot of teams. For running backs, essentially dream fit doesn't really matter, apart from the teams that have essentially locked down their running back position. Hell, the Steelers could do like a Jalen Warren situation with Cody Schrader. But, still. I think the Giants, he could actually have a much higher role, much bigger role there, even though I love Eric Gray. But Cody Schrader's a beast. Got to give a shout out to Jordan Morgan, not just for this week, and I know this is a stock report for week 11. He allowed 0 pressures versus Colorado, which, to be fair, the week before, Talise Fuaga allowed 4 pressures on the opposite side, but nonetheless, he bested my best tackle, so got to give him credit for that. But ever since the Washington game, because he was allowing quite a few pressures per game, like a minimum of 2, essentially, up through the Washington game where he allowed 3. And then all of a sudden, he's allowed 3 pressures since. And that's versus teams like Washington State, UCLA, and then obviously this past week. So he has done a phenomenal job. I got to give him credit where credit is due. I don't believe he is a bona fide NFL starting tackle forever. I just don't. I I see the traits that could lead to something like that, and it really depends where he's. Again, when guys don't have that day one impact that I'm looking for, and that's primarily due to consistency, overall IQ. I look for the mentorship aspect. If they go to a spot like the Dolphins where maybe Terran Armstead can, be a really good mentor for him, then I have a little bit of faith that they could reach that potential a lot better. Joey Porter Jr. was a great example of this. I put him at number 2 on my draft board, but if he went to, let's just say, no disrespect to the Lions, but I wouldn't trust him to develop the way he's developed so far on the Lions, because I think Patrick Peterson had a similar play style and maximized the traits that Joey Porter Jr. has. Joey Porter Jr. still has a lot of weak spots, but Pat Pete, I believe, has had a very positive effect. And again, not going to diss the Lions here, but I'm thinking of a team where I think he could still succeed, but maybe not reach the potential that he has so far. But Jordan Morgan has done a phenomenal job. I do not believe he's 362 pounds, however. Now, that's better. So he is 6'6", 320 pounds. I was like, wait a second. This is the same weight as Tavondre Sweat. No way. Okay, we're good now. We're good. But essentially, yeah, that's Tavondre Sweat's statistics there. Regardless, I think that Jordan Morgan, even at that 320-pound frame, he has a great frame. He's a very solid athlete. He can be a very good tackle. I do see some Achilles heels in his game, and the consistency is primarily what concerns me, because I do see some beautiful reps, and I think he's getting better at that. And if he continues to do so, I'm going to have more and more faith in him. Again, I think he's going to be a top 40 prospect. I always take him to the Dolphins. It's what I do. I'd probably take him to the Dolphins in the first round, but I like to get that, extra draft capital for the Dolphins if I can. But regardless, he's been a phenomenal player this year. The fact is he's improving. That's honestly all you can really ask for. And, it's still, you do see the cracks. Like at the start of the year, I'm looking at right now, 2 pressures, 1 pressure, 2, 2, 3. And then it's 0. Then you got 2 again, but 0, 1, 0. It's good to see. Those are his pressure numbers by week. It's good to see that he is, getting there. He's getting there. So looking at the rest of the stock up, Jared Verse had 5 pressures this past week. Obviously, I got to give shout outs to the top guys when they're performing, because I also give them quite a bit of a shout when they don't perform. You got Michael Penix Jr., who did a phenomenal job this past week as well. Over 300 yards, 4 big-time throws, 1 turnover-worthy play. To me, that's very admirable, so I got to give him credit where credit is due. Dante Corleone, multiple pressures. And, that's a guy who I believe primarily as more of a guy to blow up the run than anything, but, power to him. Taylor Upshaw is the one who started making me get some concerns about Talise Fuaga. He ended up having 5 pressures this week as well. So one of the more underrated guys that I'd like to give a lot of credit to. Braylon Trice had 6 pressures this past week. So again, he's getting featured once again. Jalen McLeod, he actually had, I believe, 4 pressures on 9 pass rushing reps there as an edge rusher for Auburn. I mean, if there's ever a reason to give somebody some praise, that's pretty damn good percentage-wise on terms of your translating your pass rush reps to actual pressures. Not even pass rush win rate. We're talking about pass rush pressure rate. I would be very intrigued to see. I'm going to dig a little bit more into McLeod to see if he ends up getting a little bit closer to reality with his overall win percentage. But, that's kind of ridiculous. Then you got DJ James, 2 pass breakups, low yardage. You got to give credit where credit's due. This guy's a beast. I love him apart from his size, honestly. You got Isaiah Williams, who I debated actually putting above Jordan Morgan in my stars list, 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. He is actually, he could return to school, but he's already been in college for 5 years. It's kind of a weird one where he didn't play for the first 2. It is weird. But, that guy, Isaiah's been consistent this year, putting up over 100-yard games versus some talented teams this week over Indiana. So, got to give him credit where credit's due. Zach Zinter, as well as Drake Nugent, both of those guys for Michigan's offensive line versus Penn State, ended up essentially giving 0 pressure. Granted, on essentially 0 reps, but got to give a shout out to the whole offensive line there, apart from the tackles for Michigan, because they didn't do so well. Blake Corum, 145 yards. And honestly, the whole reason why J.J. McCarthy is not going to be listed on this is because Blake Corum was such a damn good asset, they didn't need to throw the ball. Now, that hurts me as an evaluator for guys like J.J. McCarthy that I'm trying to project, But I mean, hell, they found something that worked and they continued using it to the end of the game and they won. So can't really blame them. But let's go down to the dud of the week with our stock down with Troy Fautanu. 5 pressures allowed. That to me is just not necessarily what I'm going to be looking for. But at the same time, it doesn't drop him on my stock report. Like, this is, I guess, my stock report, but it doesn't drop him on my list because I thought he was a guard the whole time. But it definitely secures the fact that he's probably not going to be a tackle. For me, the limit for the amount of pressures a tackle can have in a game before I guarantee them to be a guard is 4. It's that 4 to 5 range. If you get 4, I start getting concerned over something that could be a critical flaw. If it hits 5, and I know that sounds super controversial, but I've seen guys like Tulise Fuaga and Olu Fashanu have games where they have 4 pressures. Now, there are legitimate reasons and there are legitimate concerns when a tackle gives up 4 pressures in a game. 3, it starts getting iffy. 2, it happens. 1, that's pretty standard fare. But 5, that is something where you couldn't stop them at all. Like, genuinely, if you start giving up 4 pressures, your offense is going to start shifting away from you. Usually that 5th is where I really feel uncomfortable. And to be fair, I thought Troy Fautanu is an elite level guard, and that's going to continue to be the case. So for me, it's not that crazy. That's why I have him going to the Niners. He could end up being trained to be a tackle, but I mean, again, it's a team that could use interior offensive line help as well. Let's go rest into the stock down. Joe Milton, it's not based on his performance this week necessarily, more so a trend. You know, for me, I had him as my QB2 for a while, and that's because I saw the potential. You saw how he played in the Clemson game. Like, a lot of balls perfectly on target. Some overthrown, sure, but that's because of mechanical issues. For me, after watching Anthony Richardson last year just continue to develop his mechanics over the offseason, I fell in love with that, and I thought the same thing would happen with Joe Milton, and it hasn't. He's honestly slightly regressed in his mechanics. He's starting to stare down targets way more. I think Josh Heupel might be, like, worsening him because of the fact that the reads are relatively rigid. Like, you don't really have very much freedom in that offense to, pick and choose your own reads. He still has a cannon arm. He still makes absolute lightning plays. But, in terms of being an NFL quarterback, the game is consistency. I think that Joe Milton could still be a high-end NFL starter, but it's going to probably take 5 to 10 times as long as I expected. I thought he could come in day one if he ended up fixing his mechanics and being a star quarterback. Now I do believe it might take 3 up to 5, maybe up to 6 years. He might have to have a Geno arc in order to truly be the quarterback that we know he can be. A guy who throws 70 yards and can put it on a dime, that's valuable. But somebody who can't make the right reads scares the shit out of me. And unfortunately, Joe Milton, he's making some pretty poor reads. And, there is stuff like, with CJ Stroud, I didn't like the fact he forced some reads. Sometimes it's arm arrogance, and that's okay because if you have the arm to do it, you can do it. Joe Milton's mechanics, because I was actually fine with CJ's mechanics. Joe Milton's mechanics are not being tweaked properly, and he's not working on it. And then those are causing even more issues. You can't have arm arrogance when you don't have proper form, because that means you don't know where the ball is going to be going. And that's why Joe Milton's caused a lot of issues. So just got to say that. Amari Thomas, he's been extremely underwhelming this year. I think his name's Norman Lott. He's been much better as a defensive interior for him. Actually, the majority of Tennessee's defensive interior has been significantly better, but I think Omari had 0 pressures this past week. Dallas Turner had 1 pressure while Chris Braswell had 5. Got to, dig a little bit at my edge number 1 for that one, but, Dallas Turner he wears so many hats, so it is what it is. Leonard Taylor, another week that just did not produce. I don't get it. I really don't. This is the guy who I think is the best player on the field when he's out there. And he's consistently on stock down. He'll have a game where he probably should be a star of the week. And then the next 3, he's just an absolute bum. I don't get it. I don't. He is a pass rush menace. And there's something off. You got Cam Kitchens here. He allowed up over 90 yards this week. He's had a couple of these slip-ups where he's responsible for a significant amount of yardage, but, we'll talk about Fentrell Cypress in a minute, but it's not as bad as him. But Cam Kitchens, somebody, when I have him in my top 32, you have a much higher standard that I hold you to, and he should be performing a lot better. You got Princely Umanmielen and Cedric Johnson here. Princely had 1 pressure. Cedric had 0. So did it a little bit in reverse order. Princely, I've seen a little too much athleticism cap on him. You know, he has a really solid get off, nothing crazy, but a solid get off. He has very solid bend. He's very elite level power. But there's something that you see him in the open field. There's something that's not there. There's not the juice or the top speed that you're expecting that you do see with some of these other stars. So gotta just put that out there. CJ Goats had 0 pressures. One of those guys from Wisconsin that I love to highlight. Just, you know, he's somebody who's extremely streaky as well. He'll have 7 pressures or else he'll have 0. For me, that's fine. You know, if for a deeper player on the board, like probably top 150. But once you start getting to, you know, the top 32, that's where stuff starts hitting the fan. Fentrell Cypress, you know, he lets up he let up over 150 yards this week. But, you know, naturally, somebody who I like quite a bit, I think he might have to transition to safety. It's just obviously not working for him as a true boundary corner. I was hoping he'd take that accelerant jump going from Virginia to FSU, but it doesn't look like he's going to. And last but not least, we got EJ Smith. You know, he's actually a friend of one of my friends, so I'm a little bit saddened to put him on a list. He was supposed to have a really bright future in the NFL. He, I believe, tore his MCL last year or meniscus, and he had to end off his year, unfortunately, that way. He comes back this year, heavy rotation for the running backs, 1.8 yards per carry this week. For me, I'm really rooting for him, but it does kind of hurt to see, you know, somebody like that. You got to be realistic. It's unfortunate, but naturally you got to produce in the NFL. So that is going to be the video. Thank you so much for watching and supporting as always. See you on the far side. Peace.